Imagine this. A major world leader suddenly steps down. It's huge news.
Totally unexpected, really.
And then the spotlight swings onto someone. Well, many people outside, say, Argentina or the Catholic Church, wouldn't immediately recognize Jorge Bergoglio.
Right, and suddenly everyone's asking, okay, so who is this guy?
Exactly. It's quite a story, his journey.
Uh-huh. It's fascinating, isn't it? Someone living their life in a certain way, in a specific place, and then boom, global stage. Brings a whole different perspective.
Totally. And that's what we're doing in this deep dive. We're digging into the life, the journey of Pope Francis.
We've got biographical stuff, right? Tracing things from the beginning.
Yeah, based on accounts that cover his childhood in Buenos Aires all the way up to, becoming Pope.
So the goal is really to get under the surface, understand the moments, the people, the things that really shaped him.
Precisely. What made him the figure he became. Let's go back. Buenos Aires, December 17th, 1936. That's where Jorge Mario Bergoglio was born.
2 Italian immigrant parents, wasn't it? Father worked on the railways.
That's right. And his mother was a homemaker. He was the oldest of 5 kids. Sounds like a pretty grounded start.
Seems like it. The sources talk about a simple upbringing. Not lots of money, but, strong family ties, respect, hard work, those kinds of values.
And it wasn't just his parents shaping him, apparently.
Yeah.
His grandmother, Rosa.
Ah, yes. She comes up quite a bit, telling him stories about saints, about God. Seems like she planted some early seeds of faith.
Those early stories, they can really stick with you, can't they?
Okay.
Shape how you see everything.
Oh, absolutely. They lay down a foundation. And he's described as, what, a quiet kid? Curious?
Loved books, liked soccer. Big San Lorenzo fan, apparently.
Huh. Okay, so a normal kid in many ways, but maybe with a thoughtful side even then.
Okay, let's fast forward a bit. Teenage years. He studies chemistry, actually gets a technical degree, worked in a lab for a while.
See, that's interesting. You could almost see a different life path there, right? A scientist.
Totally. It shows that logical, maybe methodical side, but the sources say, even then, he felt like something was missing. Something deeper.
And then a major health scare when he was 21.
Yeah, really serious. A lung infection. It was life-threatening, needed surgery, lost part of a lung.
Wow. That kind of experience, facing your own mortality, it changes you.
It sounds like it really did. The accounts point to a kind of spiritual awakening during his recovery.
Feeling closer to God, maybe? A sense of being saved for a purpose?
Exactly that.
Yeah.
Like he wasn't spared by accident.
Yeah.
That feeling could be a huge motivator, I imagine.
For sure. And not long after that, he decides to join the Jesuits, the Society of Jesus.
What drew him to the Jesuits specifically? What are they known for?
Well, they have a reputation within the church for intellectual rigor, a strong focus on education, discipline.
And missionary work, social justice themes, too.
Very much so. It's
Yeah.
a demanding path, combining intellectual life with active service.
And even as he climbed the ranks in the church later on, he kept things simple, didn't he?
Remarkably so. No fancy cars, no big houses. Apparently cooked his own meals, took the bus.
It's a statement, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially for someone in his position.
It really is. It wasn't just about saving money. It was about embodying a certain ideal. The church, saving the poor, living among them. It's a theme you see again and again.
Okay, now we hit a really tough period. Argentina in the 1970s. The Dirty War.
Yeah, brutal military dictatorship. And he's a Jesuit leader then. A very difficult, dangerous position to be in.
The sources mention it's complex, right? There are different views on his role during that time.
Definitely. It's controversial. Some criticized him, felt he didn't speak out enough against the regime, didn't do enough to protect people.
But others say he worked quietly behind the scenes.
Right.
Helped people escape.
Exactly. There are accounts of him helping people hide or get out of the country. It highlights the terrible choices people in leadership faced then, balancing protecting people without provoking the regime too much.
It's a tough line to walk. And later, as Pope, he did speak about it, prayed for forgiveness for the church's silence.
He did, which suggests, a willingness to look back honestly, acknowledge the pain and the church's shortcomings. That's significant in itself.
Let's move forward. Archbishop of Buenos Aires. That image of him being different really seems to cement itself then.
Yeah, still living simply, small apartment, riding the bus, actually going into the villas miserias, the slums, listening to people.
That direct contact, being right there.
Yeah.
How do you think that shaped his outlook?
Profoundly, I'd imagine. It's one thing to read reports about poverty, quite another to sit and talk with people living it every day. It must deepen your empathy, your understanding of the systemic issues.
Then 2005 happens. Pope John Paul II passes away, and Bergoglio's name comes up. He's seen as a contender for Pope.
Papabile, as they say, a potential candidate.
But he wasn't chosen. Joseph Ratzinger became Pope Benedict XVI.
Well, and Bergoglio just went back to Buenos Aires, carried on with his work. It seems he wasn't actively chasing the top job,
Which makes 2013 even more startling, Pope Benedict's resignation. I mean, that almost never happens.
A huge shock. A pope hadn't resigned willingly in, 600 years? It threw everything open. The world was watching that chimney.
Waiting for the white smoke. And then Jorge Bergoglio steps out onto the balcony. Pope Francis.
And it was a surprise for many. He was 76, not exactly young. Didn't have deep Vatican insider experience. Not a household name globally.
So why him, do you think? What swayed the cardinals?
Maybe that outsider status was actually appealing. A fresh start. Perhaps his focus on the poor, his pastoral experience in a major city, maybe that resonated. A desire for a different kind of leadership.
And the name he picked, Francis. Wow. Instantly brings St. Francis of Assisi to mind.
Exactly. Poverty, humility, simplicity, love for creation, peace. It's all wrapped up in that name.
And no pope had ever chosen it before. That's a huge signal right from the start, isn't it?
A massive signal. It laid out a roadmap almost, a statement of intent about the kind of papacy he envisioned.
Even his very first moments, that simple greeting, brothers and sisters, good evening, asking the crowd to pray for him before he blessed them, bowing his head.
So humble, so different from the usual papal introductions.
And then refusing the traditional fancy red cape, sticking with simple white robes. Choosing to stay in the Vatican guest house, not the apostolic palace. Using a simple car.
These weren't just symbolic gestures, though they were powerful symbols. They showed he meant what the name Francis suggested. He was actually living it. It immediately made the papacy seem more human, more approachable.
And those early actions, like washing the feet of prisoners on Holy Thursday, including women and Muslims.
That sent shockwaves, in a good way for many. It was such a visible act of humility, of service, reaching out beyond traditional boundaries. It was leadership as service, in action.
So from there, these key themes start to really define his papacy, this idea of a church for the poor.
Yes, constantly speaking out against the economy that kills, against greed, inequality, corruption, pushing the church to go out to the margins, to the peripheries.
Why was that so central for him, do you think?
It seems deeply rooted in his own experiences in Argentina and his reading of the Gospels. A conviction that faith demands social justice, demands solidarity with the poor.
And then there's the emphasis on mercy, God's love being bigger than the rules. Welcoming people who felt pushed away, divorced and remarried people, gay people.
That famous line, "Who am I to judge?" It really captured that shift in tone, didn't it?
It did. It signaled a more pastoral, less judgmental approach, more about compassion and understanding.
It resonated hugely with a lot of people inside and outside the church who felt maybe alienated or judged before.
But that change wasn't easy. Some within the church hierarchy felt he was undermining doctrine, going too far.
Oh, absolutely. He faced pushback. And others felt he wasn't going far enough on some issues.
Must be tough navigating that. Leading a huge ancient institution with so many different viewpoints.
Takes real conviction, I think, and probably some shrewdness, too. But he seemed determined to stay on that path of mercy and outreach.
Then there's the environment. Laudato Si. That encyclical was groundbreaking, wasn't it?
Hugely significant, calling climate change a moral issue, talking about caring for our common home.
It really broadened the conversation, taking it beyond just scientific or political circles.
Yes, framing it as an ethical duty, a spiritual responsibility for everyone. It connected with people of all faiths or no faith. That was powerful.
And his peace efforts, traveling constantly, often to places suffering from conflict or poverty, refugee camps.
Those images of him embracing people, blessing the sick, just listening, they're incredibly moving.
That moment when he brought the presidents of Israel and Palestine to pray for peace in the Vatican gardens.
A remarkable gesture. Even if peace didn't immediately follow, the symbolism of bringing people together like that, it matters. It keeps hope alive.
Even during COVID, remember that image. Praying alone in a rainy, empty St. Peter's Square.
Unforgettable. It captured the world's isolation and fear, but also offered a sense of shared humanity, of faith holding steady in the storm.
And through all this global leadership, the sources say he kept up his simple habits, still cracking jokes, following his soccer team.
Apparently so. Making personal phone calls to people who wrote to him. It suggests an authenticity, doesn't it? That the public persona wasn't just an act.
It definitely reinforces that image of him being grounded, relatable. But being Pope wasn't without massive challenges. Reforming the Vatican, for instance.
Oh, a huge undertaking. Tackling entrenched issues like financial transparency, corruption, internal power struggles, that's bound to create resistance.
And the abuse crisis, a terrible shadow over the church.
A devastating reality he had to confront. The sources mention him meeting with survivors, apologizing publicly, setting up new rules for accountability and protection.
Though the response has been criticized too, right? Some felt it was too slow or didn't go far enough. Opinions vary.
They do. It's an incredibly complex and painful issue. But his actions did mark a shift towards acknowledging the harm and trying to establish better safeguards, even if the process is far from perfect or complete.
His focus on the poor and forgotten, that also brought criticism, didn't it? Some political leaders felt he was meddling.
Yes, accusations of being too political. But he always seemed to frame it differently.
As defending human dignity. As faith in action.
Exactly. For him, it seems, you couldn't separate faith from caring about the concrete conditions of people's lives, especially the most vulnerable.
Even Laudato Si, pushing for climate action. It wasn't universally embraced.
No. It challenged powerful economic interests, and some question whether it was the Pope's place to weigh in so strongly on scientific and political matters, but he clearly felt it was a fundamental moral issue.
And then, later on, his health. We saw him dealing with knee pain, back problems, using a wheelchair sometimes.
Yeah, the physical slowing down became more apparent, but his mind, his wit, they seemed as sharp as ever. He even joked about it.
That persistence, continuing his work despite the physical challenges, that sends a message too, doesn't it?
It really does. A kind of resilience, a commitment to service that doesn't quit easily. It also perhaps made him seem even more human.
And even then, those small habits continued. Calling ordinary people, chatting with Vatican gardeners, daily prayer.
Seems so. It reinforces that idea that his core identity, his way of being, didn't change fundamentally with the job title. It was authentic.
He often called himself a sinner, someone trying to do good, acknowledged making mistakes. That's quite disarming from a pope.
It is. That kind of humility, admitting imperfection, it can actually build credibility, makes him more relatable, perhaps more trustworthy for many people.
So when you boil it all down, the driving force seems to be, well, love. Love for God, yes, but also for the poor, for the planet, for every person.
That seems to be the thread running through it all. A deep compassion expressed through service, through calls for justice, through trying to build bridges. That seems to be his core message.
So looking ahead, Thinking about his lasting impact beyond, say, 2025, as our sources consider, he really did change the image of the papacy, didn't he?
I think so. That emphasis on simplicity, on being a shepherd who, as he said, smells like the sheep, it presented a different model, more pastoral, less regal.
And that could stick, influence future popes, how people see the church.
It very well could. He shifted expectations, perhaps, showed a different way to exercise that authority.
And all those trips, visiting slums, refugee camps,
Yeah.
making the church's presence felt in marginalized communities.
That global outreach sent a powerful message of solidarity. You are seen, you are not forgotten. That resonates deeply, especially for those on the fringes.
His work for peace, too, constantly speaking out, trying to mediate, bringing people together. That message to refugees, you are not strangers.
Yeah, challenging indifference, pushing for a more welcoming world, affirming the dignity of every single person, regardless of where they come from.
And Laudato Si's legacy, seeing the environment as a moral crisis. That feels like it will have legs for a long time, way beyond the Catholic Church.
Definitely. It helped mainstream the idea that caring for the planet is an ethical imperative for everyone. It shifted the conversation.
Also, that focus on mercy, the year of mercy, he called. The church is a field hospital, a place for healing.
That emphasis on forgiveness, on God's love being unconditional, it potentially makes the church feel more welcoming, especially for those who felt judged or excluded before. It softens the edges, perhaps.
And tackling the abuse crisis.
Mm-hmm.
It's still ongoing, obviously, but the steps taken towards accountability, towards protecting children.
Those efforts, however imperfectly realized so far, signal a commitment, a direction towards greater transparency and trying to rebuild trust. It's a long road, but the direction was set.
So wrapping this up, we've traced Jorge Bergoglio's path from Buenos Aires, this quiet, thoughtful young man, through challenging times, to becoming Pope Francis.
A leader who really emphasized humility, service, reaching out to the poor, caring for the planet, the message of mercy.
It really has been a fascinating deep dive into the forces that shaped him and the impact he's had.
Absolutely. A unique figure on the world stage.
And it leaves you thinking, doesn't it? Whatever your own background or beliefs. How could that emphasis on, say, simpler living, on compassion, apply in our own lives, in our communities?
That's a great takeaway question. What does it mean for us to be a source of care, of support for the people around us in our own small ways?
Yeah. How do we act like shepherds, in our own spheres? A really interesting thought to ponder.
It is. His example challenges us to think about our own priorities, our own connections to others, and the world.
If you want to explore more,
Sure.
Laudato Si is definitely worth reading or finding accounts of his visits and interactions. Lots to dig into.